All right, let's bring in CBS Sports NFL insider Jonathan Jones. And Jonathan, Bills break the bank on Von Miller here. Your impressions of this deal?
Well, listen, if you're a pass rusher, this is a very good year to be a pass rusher in the NFL. We're seeing so many deals flying off the shelf, and it's not just a good year to be a pass rusher. It's a good year to be Von Miller. It's a good year to be Von Miller after he really didn't play for half of the season. He gets dealt, of course, from Denver to the Los Angeles Rams, as Denver had an eye on the future. The Rams had an eye on that Lombardi that they ended up winning. And the Rams did a very smart thing by sort of load managing Von Miller throughout the season. Sean McVay was saying, hey, we don't need Von Miller in November. We need him around Christmas time. We need him in January. We need him on the football field in February. And of course, he played fantastic there in the playoffs. That playoff appearance for him and that experience surely made him a whole lot of money. So I understand that the deal right now is being reported as a 6-year, $120 million deal. I would be very surprised if he saw the end of that contract. Of course, the contract that he signed after his rookie deal with the Denver Broncos, he saw the end of that one, but he will be 33 in about 10 days or so. That would take him up to 39 years old. The Bills didn't have a ton of cap space, but we all knew that they wanted to get a pass rusher there for their team as they try to get over the hump and back into the Super Bowl for the first time in 30 years. So a huge, huge deal here for Von Miller and the Bills.
No question about it. He goes from a team that won the Super Bowl to a team that has Super Bowl aspirations. Earlier in the day, Chandler Jones to the Raiders, now Miller off the board to the Bills. So what is it looking like on the edge rusher market and free agency for teams that are looking to put money on a player to get after the quarterback?
Well, I mean, this sort of kind of does it, right? Randy Gregory went to Denver. DeMarcus Lawrence already went back to Dallas. You mentioned Chandler Jones. Yannick Ngakoue just got dealt to the Colts. And now the big ticket item here with Von Miller. And the Buffalo Bills have been really strengthening their defensive line for years now. You go back a couple of drafts ago, they drafted A.J. Epineza. And then last year's draft, the year before that, they drafted Ed Oliver, a defensive tackle. They just picked up his fifth-year option. Then it was A.J. Epineza. Last year, along the defensive line, they got Boogie Basham in the second round. And that, of course, had been followed up by blanking on his name right now. But that is what the Buffalo Bills under Brandon Beane have been trying to do for some time here. They've wanted to get after the quarterback. Greg Rousseau, of course, was their first-round pick out of Miami. Of course he was. And so what they want to do is you go back to that Kansas City game in the AFC title game. And obviously we know that Patrick Mahomes, they got the ball first, and they had the ball last when they won in overtime. Well, they only sacked Patrick Mahomes twice in that game. You have to be able to affect the quarterback. Look at what we've seen here in the AFC West with how the Chargers traded for Khalil Mack. You mentioned Chandler Jones, obviously, and the Raiders. Kansas City already had their pass rushers, and the Denver Broncos getting Randy Gregory to team up there. So it's well known in the AFC. That's where the passers are. That's where you have to affect the passer. You have to have a quarterback on your defensive side. You have to be able to affect the passer. The Buffalo Bills just made themselves better with this move.
All right, Jonathan, so that's the Bills' perspective on it, getting after quarterbacks. There are plenty of good ones in the AFC. But with regards to the Rams, they were set to have the inside track on keeping Miller. What does this mean for their offseason plans?
Well, it was always going to be a little bit difficult for the Rams because, again, as I mentioned with that Super Bowl run that Von Miller made with them, he made himself some money. And so, there was a report out there that Dallas Cowboys had a lot of interest in him, but he had to, quote, they had to meet his financial expectations. Very clearly, the Buffalo Bills, by virtue of a 6-year, $120 million deal. Again, another caution, have to wait to see the structure of that. But listen, Les Snead had to know that there was a very, very good chance that he wasn't going to be able to afford Von Miller. And so there should be plans in place. Those plans will unfold and will be revealed to us. But I would have to believe that in the past 24 or so hours, it became rather evident to the Los Angeles Rams, especially after the Cowboys lost out on Randy Gregory, that the price was going to be too high to keep Von Miller in L.A.
Jonathan, there's a lot of strong teams in the AFC. Where does this stack the Bills with regards to Super Bowl contenders coming out of the AFC?
Yeah, it's difficult to assess that right now when everybody on paper apparently in the AFC got stronger in the past couple of days, right? But when you look at the Bills, they're very clearly, again, the favorite in their division. You're going to take them over Miami, certainly going to take them over the Jets, and you're going to take them over the Patriots, who so far have been mostly standing pat in free agency. You look elsewhere, the Chiefs. Listen, I'm betting on the Chiefs until they show me otherwise. I think a lot of us, respectfully, but also disrespectfully to the Bengals, think it was a little bit of a flash in the pan. Okay, show us again next year before we're picking you to be in the next Super Bowl. And yeah, the Chargers, well, we can believe in the Chargers enough, and they certainly did get better with J.C. Jackson and Khalil Mack. This is also still a team that missed the playoffs last year. So I have the Bills right behind the Chiefs. But when we're talking about right behind, I'm talking about a photo finish. I'm talking about just right down the line at Churchill Downs in terms of the Chiefs. They have been able to do it. They were the ones that got one on the Bills in the playoffs last year. That's the only reason they have the edge on the Bills in my book.
Our thanks to Jonathan Jones, a CBS Sports NFL insider, on the heels of Von Miller to the Bills. 6 years, $120 million. This is what Buffalo is getting. A two-time Super Bowl champ, did it with Denver. And last year with the Rams, he was the MVP of that Broncos Super Bowl win, led the NFL in pressures after joining the Rams with 18, and he joined them after week 10. Von Miller getting a lot of money there.
Bills are hoping Von Miller will be one of the final pieces to a championship team. No player's ever played in a Super Bowl victory for 3 different teams. He could become the first after winning Super Bowls with the Broncos and the Rams. Miller led the NFL in pressures with 18 after joining the Rams in Week 10. Again, he was acquired from the Broncos and then went to L.A. and helped them win Super Bowl 56. Let's get instant analysis. Welcome in CBS Sports HQ NFL insider Josina Anderson. Josina, what more can you tell us about this deal that sends Von Miller to Buffalo?
So I've been talking to Von. Now we can talk about it freely, several times, through this process. And I want to just first and foremost, leave it to Von Miller, to make a splash and go to a whole new team. You mentioned that stat, that no player has played in the Super Bowl and obviously won, 3 times. And Von Miller certainly is aware of that. I was the one who made him aware of that. I texted him that. And, that's certainly something that he admitted that is, objective of his, obviously. Von Miller is about winning. He is very well aware of, the legacy players at his position. You want to, talk about Bruce Smith and some of the great pass rushers, before his time and all that, and all of the accomplishments that they have, achieved. And so this gives him an opportunity, puts him in position to do something that somebody has never done in the NFL. I was just talking to a source with the Bills who just said that hopefully Von Miller can do for us what he did, for the Rams. But, just to reflect on the conversations that I've had with Von, during this process, first and foremost, earlier today, one of the rival networks here had reported that he was likely headed to the Rams. And I talked to him while I think he was getting on a plane, at that time. And I was like, are you in LA? What's going on? But he wouldn't say. But he just, said that a decision was not definitive. And so see right here, going to another team, as I just mentioned at CBS Sports HQ, once we passed over a half an hour outside of the new league year at that time. But one of the things that he just said is he had multiple considerations. On one hand, he really wanted to give the Rams an opportunity to present him an offer, think through that. As he said to me, they've been good to me, Joe. So make sure that that is clear. Obviously, we had that quote from him on Twitter a few days ago. The other consideration when it came to a team like Denver, that's where his son is. And obviously he's a father now, and he's got a lot of love for his son Valor and all those things. So those are, considerations too. And then obviously he's, very aware of the history and what he's trying to accomplish as a player, as a man, as a person in the NFL. And so being with this team, the Bills, who now under Sean McDermott, who we also interviewed at the Combine, just on the cusp of, potentially getting into the Super Bowl. We all saw that last play, against the Chiefs, where things just kind of fell apart. So Von getting the opportunity potentially to be a difference maker for that team, as it was so crushing for those coaches and still is, that they weren't able to go through as the representatives for the AFC and then see, the Bengals also not be able to cement it against the Rams. So big opportunity with all that collection of talent to potentially do it for another team. And we all saw him on G speaking to, of course, he was going to, announce it himself, although I tried to get it first. But I think that's great. Bills Mafia has that whole fan base is just really energetic, really good, very appreciative of Josh Allen. So I'm very interested to see how the integration of Von Miller into that defense works out for them.
Yeah, because when you take a look at Buffalo, right, they led the league in fewest points per game allowed, 17 points per game, yards per game. But you take us back to that playoff game, yeah, they needed to put pressure on Patrick Mahomes. So what does this mean for the Bills?
Well, the other really important part about what happened defensively in that game that we were talking about, and just even for the Bills in general through the postseason, is that they were missing Tre'Davious White. So just in talking to sources, on that team, they feel like if they, had those pieces, and obviously sometimes things happen on a given play. It's not indicative of, the ability to coach and things like that, but you learn from those things. And that's a searing, moment for that, defensive staff and the defensive players, much as was the year before when, Stephon Diggs was standing at the corner of the end zone, making sure that he remembered, losing the year before, not being able to progress in the postseason. So I think Von Miller is going to be a huge difference, for that team, and maybe the biggest difference that gets you over the edge. And maybe it's just another thing too for Deshaun Watson to think about as you're thinking about not only the team that you're picking, but what conference you're picking to be in as far as your path, through the postseason. We saw like a player like LeBron James and how easy it sometimes is to get back to the finals when you're coming through the East. A lot harder in the West, though things are changing now. But those are considerations when you're trying to win a championship too.
All right, so Von Miller headed to Western New York. He's played in cold weather before. Won't be a problem playing there in Buffalo. Got to go break some tables as well with the Bills Mafia indeed. Josina Anderson with the very latest here on CBS Sports HQ. Thank you, Josina. All right, here's a look at the odds to win the AFC. Bills and Chiefs, the favorites. At plus 425, Bills are also the favorites to win the Super Bowl, plus 750, and they add Von Miller, and that defense just gets even more loaded. Of course, they got Josh Allen leading the way, and perhaps we'll see another rematch between Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen, and maybe Von Miller will be leading their charge to the AFC title game. We're about to find out, but in the meantime, Von Miller going to wear number 40 for the Buffalo Bills, and his bank account's going to get a whole lot bigger. 6 years, $120 million.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.